Welcome to Stories Room. Enjoy listening and don't forget to subscribe. My name is Jack Reynolds, and this story is my confession, a chronicle of shattered trust and relentless revenge. It all began on one of those summer evenings when the air was heavy with the promise of change, and the office corridors buzzed with chatter about the upcoming corporate party. I worked at a large company, Horizon Industries, where success was measured not only by business metrics, but also by one's ability to earn the trust of colleagues and superiors. Until recently, I believed I knew my wife, Emily, better than anyone else. We had been married for nearly 10 years, and it seemed our life was built on a solid foundation of mutual understanding and support. Yet in those days, something felt off. Rumors about the upcoming party, promotions, and career leaps swirled around us. Emily had just received a promotion. Her colleagues hailed it as a well-deserved reward for her dedication and professionalism. I, of course, was happy for her, although deep inside I sensed an inexplicable foreboding, as if disaster were slowly seeping into my heart. In our evenings together, while we discussed our plans, I noticed a fleeting uncertainty in her eyes, a hidden emotion she never spoke about. In the days leading up to the celebration, the office brimmed with preparations. Invitations were sent out, outfits were discussed, and even coffee breaks became opportunities for whispered gossip. At that moment, I tried to remain calm, though deep down I sensed that a storm was approaching. On the day of the party, as usual, I helped Emily get ready. Her outfit was elegant and modern, a blend of a tailored silhouette with delicate, coquettish accents that emphasized her femininity. She looked dazzling, and I found myself remembering how I once trusted her implicitly, believing that our love was unshakable. Yet in her gaze, I could detect a shadow of doubt that I couldn't decipher. On our way to the downtown venue where the celebration was to be held, I watched as the streets came alive in the evening. The city lights, the hum of traffic, and the chatter of passers-by all merged into a festive ambience. Yet beneath that brilliance, I felt as though something ominous lurked. Emily remained silent, her eyes fixed on the passing scenery, while I struggled to find the right words to comfort her, only to receive a fragile smile in return. Arriving at the luxurious hotel, I was struck by the contrast between the outward splendor and the inner turmoil I felt. The lobby teemed with colleagues, people accustomed to success and the glamorous side of corporate life. Everyone strove to look impeccable. Gleaming suits, expensive accessories, and an air of expectation for new triumphs. But I couldn't shake the feeling that behind this polished facade lay hidden intrigues and secret games. Emily seemed to be the center of attention. Colleagues congratulated her, whether sincerely or with forced smiles, and the management praised her performance as an example for others. Meanwhile, I felt like an outsider at my own celebration, watching life rush by as I was gripped by suspicion. Every glance, every smile around me hinted at a world far more complex than I had ever imagined. As the moment for the banquet drew near, I slipped away for a minute to gather my thoughts. In a quiet corner of the hall, I tried to unravel the mystery of what was really happening between us. My mind raced with the thought that I knew so little about Emily's inner life, about the connections and secrets she had guarded for so long. I was troubled not only by her promotion but also by how effortlessly she mingled with influential people at the company. In that moment, my longtime friend and colleague Mark approached me. He always knew how to offer the right words of support. "Jack, you seem pensive," he remarked as he sat beside me. I forced a smile, but inside I was overwhelmed. "Just a premonition," I replied, unable to reveal the depths of my inner turmoil. Mark merely shrugged, though I saw a glimmer of understanding in his eyes, something I desperately needed. The corridors of the hotel were filled with laughter and conversation, and I decided to rejoin Emily, determined to be by her side on this evening. We walked together, yet the distance between us felt vast. I tried to read her thoughts in the subtle expressions of her face, but all I saw was the mask of professional confidence she wore so well in public. For a brief moment on the terrace, overlooking the glittering night city, I believed that maybe everything could still be fixed. But deep down, I knew that behind the glittering facade of corporate celebration lay something dark and destructive. That night, the first hints of a coming catastrophe emerged. I had no inkling that not only was I about to endure another corporate party, but that I would soon face revelations capable of shattering my world. While others reveled and mingled, I silently scrutinized every movement of Emily, desperately searching for any sign of betrayal. Doubt and fear gradually crystallized into a cold resolve that would soon set my course irrevocably. As the clock in the hotel neared the start of the banquet, my pulse quickened and my thoughts spun wildly. Something was terribly amiss, and I knew that this night would mark a turning point in my life. Even if everything had once seemed perfect, now a storm was gathering. One that would forever alter our past, present, and future. Part 2. A personal revelation. The corporate party continued in its usual splendor, laughter, the soft murmur of conversation, and the genuine joy of colleagues seemed to epitomize the success of Horizon Industries. Yet beneath the festive exterior, a sense of dread and looming disaster was building within me. Before I could fully immerse myself in the celebration, I retreated to a quiet corner of the hall, a small haven away from the city's hustle and the party's clamor. It was there, in the half-light, that Mr. Jordan Harrison unexpectedly approached me. His stride was confident, his gaze icy, as if he already knew the pain he was about to inflict. "Jack, can we speak privately for a moment?" he asked, his voice laced with a derisive smile. Despite the nagging sense of danger, I followed him to a secluded area away from the throng. There, in the silence, Harrison sat down across from me at a small table and, as if to signal the unveiling of a grim secret, he pulled out his smartphone. My heart froze when he looked me squarely in the eyes and said, "Jack, do you want to know how your Emily got that promotion?" Before I could even blink, he pressed play. On the small screen, a video began to unfold, so intimate that the sight of it pierced my heart like a cold knife. The footage revealed Emily surrendering herself entirely to forbidden passions. Not only was Harrison featured, but 2 other men appeared as well, their identities obscured by shadow. Only Harrison and I bore witness to this cruel truth. There were no public screens or dramatic announcements, just this private moment where the betrayal of my wife was laid bare in the most personal of details. In the silence of our secluded space, his voice continued. "There you have it, Jack. Now you know why she was so ambitious about her career. And remember, she belongs to us. There's nothing you can do." Those words, spoken quietly yet dripping with venomous arrogance, cut straight into my soul. I sat there, paralyzed by a mix of anguish and fury, unable to fathom that the woman I loved could betray me so utterly. Each second of that video hammered home the catastrophic truth of her infidelity. Seeing the turmoil on my face, Harrison's sneer deepened as he observed my reaction. His expression offered no hint of regret, only a cold satisfaction in wielding information that would shatter everything I held dear. In that intimate, private moment, as I grappled with the raw sting of betrayal, a seething storm of emotions began to form. Every second of that revelation deepened my resolve to seek justice. Justice that would be both personal and unyielding. Part 3. The Fight with the Boss. After Harrison left me alone with my crushing pain and betrayal, an uncontrollable fury began to boil inside me. Unable to contain the surge of emotions any longer, I stormed out of that secluded corner in the hotel corridor, my footsteps echoing like harbingers of inevitable retribution. Every beat of my heart cried out for justice, a justice that must be exacted, no matter the cost. It wasn't long before my instincts guided me to the very spot where I knew Harrison would soon reappear. In the shadows of a service corridor, our paths crossed once more. His cold, self-satisfied gaze momentarily shifted to surprise as I, without a moment's hesitation, charged toward him. Words were unnecessary. Only a silent determination and searing rage propelled me forward. I grabbed him by the collar and, like a wild beast, lunged at him. Our fists collided with a resounding crash that reverberated through the corridor. Each blow I delivered was a burst of retribution, aimed squarely at the man who had so brazenly shattered everything I cherished. Harrison tried to defend himself, his arms trembling with shock and pain, but my fury was unstoppable. Blow after blow rained down, and with every strike, his resistance waned. The sounds of our struggle filled the corridor, and the cold tiles bore silent witness to my rebellion against betrayal. At last, when his movements came to a halt and he collapsed to the floor, I paused, breathless and overwhelmed, as I stared at the lifeless expression on his face. In his eyes, I saw fear and regret, emotions that could never mask the justice I so desperately craved. This was merely the first blow, the initial step on a path that would ensure each betrayer paid dearly for their treachery. Though voices began to gather around us, I heard nothing but the pounding of my own heart, a relentless drumbeat echoing my vow that betrayal would not go unpunished. Part 4. Confrontation and Destruction. After emerging from that dark corridor, still reeling from my clash with Harrison, I returned home only to face another agonizing battle. The house, once warm and inviting, now seemed cold and alien, a stark mirror of my shattered heart. Emily was sitting in the living room, her eyes vacant and filled with anxiety and fear. Her very presence was a bitter reminder that everything we had built together now lay in ruins. I approached her, each step heavy with the dread of an inevitable rupture. "Emily," I whispered, struggling to control the tremor in my voice. How could you betray me like this?" She lifted her eyes, and in them I saw only confusion, a desperate search for escape from this labyrinth of pain. Her voice was soft, barely audible. "Jack, please, let me explain." Her words seemed to echo the ghost of a love that once was. Sitting across from me, she tried to offer reasons, painting the events as if they had been forced upon her by overwhelming circumstances, suggesting that she had been unable to resist temptation when it presented itself. "That can't be just a mistake," I growled, each word striking her like a blow. "You've destroyed everything we had." Emily attempted to protest, her voice trembling with despair. "Jack, I thought it would help me. I felt unappreciated, like I deserved more. It was just a momentary lapse, a mistake I tried to fix." Her justifications rang hollow, like a cold wind stripping away the last remnants of trust. I couldn't believe that the woman I had loved with all my heart could commit such a betrayal. My heart overflowed with anger and sorrow, and soon I could no longer contain the torrent of emotions surging within me. "A mere lapse?" I shouted, my rising despair breaking through. "Your words, your excuses, they cannot mask this endless betrayal." In that moment, as if in response to every word she uttered, a cold and unyielding resolve crystallized inside me. The love that had once warmed our lives was replaced by a searing fury, and without thinking, my trembling hand struck her across the cheek. In that instant, time seemed to freeze. Emily gasped, her eyes filling with pain and terror, while I, overwhelmed by emotion, could not cease. Each agonizing second, each shuddering breath, felt like an attempt to reclaim a semblance of justice, even as I tore apart what we once shared. Her words, now feeble murmurs of regret, faded into the silence, leaving behind only the echo of shattered hope. When my hand finally stilled and silence once again claimed the room, I stood over her, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what had just occurred. In her eyes, I saw not only physical pain but a profound despair, a stark realization that the bond we once called love was irreparably broken. Desperately, Emily whispered, "Jack, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen." But her words could not penetrate the fortress of anger and betrayal that had taken root within me. I understood that my actions had obliterated any possibility of reconciliation. In that moment, I realized that our past, once filled with joyful memories, was forever lost. The home that once rang with laughter and love had become a battleground for our final, irrevocable parting. That night marked the beginning of the end, a moment when love and trust gave way to hatred and destruction. I stood amid the ruins of our once shared world, fully aware that the path we had chosen would lead only into an abyss of pain, where there were no victors and no solace. Part 5. Uncovering the Secrets. After that fateful night when Emily's words dissolved into the cold silence, I found myself alone with my anguish and fury. In the empty, desolate home that had once been filled with our shared joy, I knew it was time to uncover the entire truth, the secret that my wife had so carefully hidden. Seated in the dim living room, I, Jack Reynolds, gathered my thoughts and made a decision that would forever alter my understanding of our life. My hands trembled as I picked up her smartphone, left abandoned on the table. For a moment, I hesitated, but the pain of betrayal lent me the strength. I had to know everything. I began scrolling through her messages, at first noticing the mundane business texts and congratulatory notes about her promotion. Soon, however, my eyes landed on a chat with the name Jordan H. My heart clenched with each word, and every line revealed horrifying details. In one message, filled with passion and promise, it read, "Emily, every moment without you is agony. You make me feel alive. Without you, my life is empty." These words, so brutally honest, sliced through my consciousness like a knife. I continued reading, uncovering hundreds of messages in which Emily and Jordan H. discussed secret meetings, plans, and even future career moves, conversations in which her liaison with him played a pivotal role. In one exchange, she wrote, "Jack will never understand how much I need to be with you. But with him, everything is unpredictable. With him, I feel the freedom and passion I have always craved." The messages were accompanied by photos and short video clips. I saw images of Emily posing against luxurious backdrops, captured in the arms of Harrison, and alongside two other men, identified in the messages as James and Brian. In one video, shot in Harrison's private office, chilling words echoed, "Emily, I will never forget how you laughed when you said Jack would never know the truth. We'll prove it, and he'll be left with nothing." Each new discovery, every message, photograph, and video frame, bombarded me with the full force of her betrayal. The tenderness that once defined our life had been replaced by a cold, calculated ambition. She had not simply been unfaithful, but had engaged in a meticulously orchestrated scheme. I meticulously saved every piece of evidence, copying messages, storing photos and videos onto an external drive, to ensure I could expose this web of lies once and for all. With every new piece of evidence, my pain deepened, but so did my resolve. I knew I had to do more than understand how this infidelity happened. I had to prove to the world that my life had been shattered by betrayal, and that nothing short of justice could set it right. Part 6. Seeking a Lawyer and Legal Proceedings. After sleepless nights filled with agony and endless thoughts of betrayal, I realized that I could not bear this burden alone. With every shred of evidence, messages, photos, video clips, I understood that it was time to seek the help of professionals. The thirst for revenge demanded not only personal retribution but justice through the law. I called Michael Carter, a renowned lawyer known for his uncompromising stance and experience in cases where personal relationships and corporate reputations were at stake. We arranged to meet in his office, located on the top floors of a skyscraper in the business district. When I stepped into his bright, minimalist reception area, Michael greeted me with a steady, knowing look, as if he could already sense the depth of my pain. "Jack," he said, extending his hand, "please, tell me what happened." Seated before his imposing desk, I laid out the truth piece by piece. Slowly, step by step, I presented him with screenshots of our conversations, excerpts of videos, and photographs, each piece a fragment of the puzzle that formed the horrific picture of betrayal. Michael scrutinized every piece of evidence, nodding occasionally. His expression remained unreadable, but determination gleamed in his eyes. "This case has every chance of succeeding, Jack," he finally said. "The evidence is overwhelming. But be prepared. The legal battle will demand not only financial resources but immense moral strength. We will file a lawsuit against both Emily and Harrison, and we will hold all those involved accountable for their conspiracy." His words hit me like a blast of icy water, stirring both relief and the stark realization of the battle ahead. Together, we devised a strategy. Meticulously document every violation, detail how their conspiracy had ruined my life and reputation, and expose how corruption and blatant breaches of corporate policy were at the heart of their actions. Over the following days, Michael and I worked tirelessly. Every detail, every line of conversation, was scrutinized and transformed into legally sound arguments. We drafted a complaint outlining not only the physical and emotional torment I had endured, but also the financial losses incurred as a result of their treachery. Every piece of evidence was systematically organized and prepared for court. Before long, the case became public. Colleagues and business partners whispered about the scandal that threatened to shake the very foundations of Horizon Industries. The media picked up the story, and soon discussions of Emily's betrayal and the conspiracy spread throughout the city. But for me, this was not merely a public spectacle. It was the first step toward reclaiming justice. The court hearing was scheduled for a few weeks later. On the day of the trial, I sat in the courtroom, tension gripping my chest as my mind replayed every piece of evidence that was now about to be scrutinized by the judge. Michael Carter presented my case with unwavering confidence, highlighting each message and pinpointing the exact moments when betrayal transformed into a calculated conspiracy aimed at advancing her career. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. The judge, a serious man with penetrating eyes, listened intently. The opposing counsel tried to downplay the facts, presenting the events as mere coincidences or misunderstandings. But Michael methodically dismantled their arguments, reinforcing every point with indisputable evidence. Witnesses testified that Emily and Harrison had conspired together, and documentary evidence made it clear that her promotion was not earned but fraudulently acquired. Day after day, the trial unfolded like a marathon of justice. It emerged that the betrayal and conspiracy reached far beyond personal infidelity. They involved severe violations of corporate policy and blatant abuse of power, eroding the very trust in our company's leadership. The documents Michael presented left no room for doubt. Emily's promotion was nothing more than a sham, obtained through an illicit conspiracy where personal gain trumped professional integrity. When the judge issued an interim decision, I felt, for the first time, that justice might finally prevail. Temporary measures were put in place, barring the accused from their positions until the case could be fully resolved. This measure gave me hope that the pain of betrayal would not go unanswered. I watched the proceedings with steely resolve, knowing that every word and every piece of evidence was bringing me closer to the moment when those responsible would be held accountable by law. This legal battle was not merely about seeking compensation. It was a fight to break the cycle of corruption and restore the principles of honesty and trust. Every document, every testimony, struck a blow against the illusion of impunity that had allowed these betrayals to flourish. In the end, as the case neared its conclusion, I knew that the truth, built from years of suffering and pain, would ultimately triumph. The court's decision not only validated my claims but forced the company to overhaul its internal policies, while the wrongdoers faced severe legal repercussions. The punishments mandated by law were the first steps toward restoring order and respect for the principles of honesty. Though the legal battle left deep scars on my soul, it also became a symbol of redemption. The law, however harsh it may be, had become my ally, and through it, I began to reclaim my lost dignity and renew my belief that the truth can indeed transform even the darkest circumstances. Part 7. The Attempt at Explanation and Moral Devastation. Several weeks passed after the courtroom drama, and although the storm had somewhat subsided, a void still lingered in the ruins of our once shared home. In that desolate space, where the echoes of happier times had been replaced by the stark silence of loss, Emily decided it was time to talk. One gloomy evening, when even the streetlights seemed superfluous and the shadow of the past loomed over every corner, she approached me. I was sitting in the living room, my eyes fixed on the emptiness, when a soft knock at the door broke the silence. When I opened it, there she stood, exhausted, her eyes brimming with regret and sorrow, yet also shadowed by despair. She entered slowly, as if fearful of disturbing the fragile balance between past and present, and in a trembling voice began, "Jack, please let me explain. I know I've ruined everything, but please, just listen." Her words trembled as if each one were chiseled from deep pain and fear of the inevitable. I searched her eyes for even a flicker of the woman I once loved, but saw only the reflection of my own disappointment. Emily's attempts to justify herself, framing the events as if they were forced by overwhelming circumstances, fell on deaf ears. "Your words are nothing more than a feeble echo of a lost truth, Emily," I said coldly, each word a blow that cut deep. "You have destroyed everything we built together." She tried to protest, her voice quivering with anguish. "Jack, I thought it would help me. I felt unappreciated, like I deserved more. It was just a momentary lapse, a mistake I tried to fix." Her excuses sounded as hollow as a cold wind stripping away the last remnants of trust. I couldn't believe that the woman I had loved with all my heart could commit such an act. My heart was overwhelmed with uncontrollable anger and sorrow, and I could no longer restrain the torrent of emotions surging within me. "A mere lapse?" I shouted, my despair breaking through. "Your words, your excuses, they cannot hide this endless betrayal." At that moment, as if in direct response to every word she uttered, a cold resolve crystallized within me. The love that had once enveloped our lives was replaced by a searing anger, and without thinking, my trembling hand struck her across the cheek. In that split second, time seemed to stand still. Emily gasped, her eyes filling with pain and terror, while I, overtaken by emotion, could not stop. Every agonizing second, every shuddering breath, felt like an attempt to reclaim some semblance of justice, even as I tore apart the remnants of our former love. Her words, now weak murmurs of remorse, faded into the silence, leaving only the echo of broken hope. When my hand finally stilled and silence once again fell over the room, I stood there, struggling to comprehend the enormity of what had just transpired. In her eyes, I saw not only physical agony but also a deep, overwhelming despair. A clear sign that the bond we once cherished was now irreparably broken. In a desperate, trembling voice, Emily whispered, "Jack, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." But her words could not penetrate the cold fortress of anger and betrayal that had taken root within me. I understood that my actions had obliterated any chance of reconciliation. In that moment, I realized that our past, once filled with joyous memories, was lost forever. The home that had once resonated with laughter and love had become a battleground for our final, irrevocable separation. That tragic night marked the beginning of the end, when love and trust were supplanted by hatred and ruin. I stood amid the remnants of our broken world, knowing full well that the path we had chosen led only to an abyss of pain, with no victors and no solace. Part 8. Revenge and Revelation. The courtroom proceedings had ended, but the true reckoning was just beginning. When I first witnessed the chaos rippling through the corporate headquarters of Horizon Industries in response to the exposé, an unyielding determination surged within me to act decisively and publicly. I, Jack Reynolds, had gathered every shred of evidence of betrayal, messages, photographs, videos, and now it was time to reveal them to the world. Late one night, I sat in a modest office with Michael Carter, finalizing our strategy. We decided to hold a press conference right in the main office of the company. This was not just a personal vendetta for infidelity. It was an exposure of a system in which personal ambition and greed had overridden the values of honesty and trust. "We must show that no one is above the law," Michael declared firmly as he reviewed yet another screenshot of the conversation where Emily and Harrison, with their customary cold calculation, plotted her promotion. His words hit like a verdict, and I nodded, knowing there was no turning back. Early the next morning, as the city was just awakening, I arrived at the main office hall. The room, prepared for the press conference, was packed with journalists, business representatives, and company employees whose futures now hung in the balance. I had secured maximum media attention, and as I stepped onto the stage, all eyes were on me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice strong and resolute, Today, I want to reveal the truth, a truth that has long been hidden behind the facade of corporate success and empty promises. A tense silence fell over the room as every listener strained to understand what was coming next. I raised a tablet loaded with all our evidence. The first display was of screenshots of conversations between my wife, Emily, and Mr. Harrison. Discussions that not only schemed her promotion but also organized clandestine meetings capable of shifting the balance of power within the company. I scrolled through photograph after photograph, each one driving home the final blow to the edifice of corporate deceit. "Look at this evidence," I declared, pointing to the screen. "These aren't mere moments of personal indiscretion. They are part of a carefully orchestrated conspiracy that violates both ethical standards and our company's policies." My wife, entrusted for her professionalism, was promoted not on merit, but through illicit connections, and Harrison, exploiting his position, used his power for personal gain. My words rang out without compromise. Journalists took down every detail, and the expressions in the room shifted from astonishment to outrage. Several high-ranking employees, beginning to grasp the depth of the betrayal, distanced themselves from the scandal, unwilling to see their futures tainted. I recounted every message, every photograph, proving that behind the veneer of a successful business lay a sordid game of ambition and corruption. "This revelation isn't simply about personal revenge," I added, my voice softening with the weight of the truth. "It is a warning to all who would undermine the principles of integrity and trust. Our company and our society cannot operate on a foundation of lies and corruption." Whispers of shock and indignation rippled through the room. Some fled, unable to bear the sight of unvarnished truth. The media exploded with the story, and soon the scandal spread far beyond the company walls. With the revelations came strict disciplinary measures. The company was forced to dismiss Harrison and his cohorts, and an internal investigation unearthed even more violations than we had initially suspected. Each word spoken and every piece of evidence presented restored my lost strength. The revenge I had nursed in the darkest hours of betrayal had transformed into a cathartic act of retribution, not only for me, but for all who had suffered from this web of deceit. My name, once synonymous with pain and loss, was now becoming a symbol of determination and the uncompromising pursuit of truth. After the press conference, as I left the hall, I felt a mixture of relief and bitterness. I knew that further lawsuits, countless legal battles, and perhaps even criminal charges lay ahead, but that day marked the first decisive step toward ending this cycle of betrayal. Emily and Harrison would now have to face the consequences of their actions, not only in court but in the court of public opinion, where their reputations would be forever marred. Every time I recall that day, I'm reminded that justice will eventually catch up with those who dare to toy with the lives of others. In this struggle, there are no real winners. Only those who choose deception and treachery, who eventually find themselves exposed and punished. I, Jack Reynolds, now stand on the threshold of a new chapter in my life, certain that truth always prevails, and that revenge is not merely a word, but an act of liberation from pain and deceit. Part 9. The consequences of infidelity and punishment. Following the explosive press conference and public revelations, retribution came swiftly and without compromise. At Horizon Industries, there was no longer any tolerance for such deceit. The corporate board, shaken by the scandal, imposed harsh measures against everyone involved in the conspiracy. In the days that followed, an internal investigation launched by the board uncovered a series of breaches in corporate ethics and even the law. Mr. Harrison, once a respected figure, was suspended from his position and soon faced criminal charges for abusing his authority. His once sterling reputation was now stained with disgrace and an uncompromising accountability. As for Emily, the promotion she had secured through underhanded means was exposed as nothing more than a facade masking deep-seated corruption. All the evidence we had compiled, and which was confirmed by the internal audit, clearly showed that her personal gain was placed above the company's interests. Consequently, the management decided to terminate her employment immediately and revoke all her previously granted positions. The news spread rapidly throughout every department, and many employees, realizing the extent of the betrayal, distanced themselves from her, unwilling to risk their own futures by association. The corporate culture, once based on trust and mutual respect, underwent a radical transformation. The leadership announced a complete overhaul of internal policies and the formation of a special committee dedicated to preventing such violations in the future. New rules and stricter oversight became the symbols of a renewed commitment to restoring trust and justice. Employees, who had previously remained silent, now actively supported these reforms, understanding that only transparency and honesty could rebuild their faith in the future. Outside the company, public opinion was relentless. The media launched an in-depth investigation that quickly turned into a full-blown scandal. The reputation of Horizon Industries suffered greatly, and investors demanded sweeping changes in leadership. The exposé I initiated became the catalyst for major reforms, not only within the company but throughout the entire business community. People began to understand that no career could be built on betrayal and corruption. For me, this period marked a journey toward redemption through justice. I, Jack Reynolds, watched as every wrongdoer received their just punishment. The law and rigorous corporate oversight had prevailed over deceit and treachery. Witnessing those who had shattered not only my personal happiness, but also the very foundations of corporate integrity being held accountable brought a bittersweet sense of closure. Though the pain of betrayal would never fully fade, knowing that the truth had been exposed and that justice was served symbolized the dawn of a new chapter. This story now stands as a lesson to all who attempt to sidestep moral and legal principles for personal gain. The vicious game built on deception and treachery cannot persist unchallenged. Today, Horizon Industries is emerging anew, a company rebuilding trust on the strict principles of corporate ethics, while my suffering has become the catalyst for lasting change. Judicial decisions, internal investigations, and the unyielding public outcry all made it clear. Betrayal is intolerable. The conspirators paid dearly for their actions, and the renewed corporate culture, grounded in transparency and accountability, offers hope for the future. Justice has prevailed, and though I lost much, I have reclaimed my dignity and reaffirmed my belief that truth has the power to change the world for the better. That's the end of our story. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on new stories and share this video so others can discover these great stories too.